If I could have everyone take their seats, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening. I'm going to call this tentative budget hearing to order. If I could get you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the purpose of the public hearing is to adopt the tentative millage rates and the tentative budget for fiscal year 2025-2026. Please note to all members of the public, we have staff available this evening to review and discuss your personal notice of proposed property taxes that you've recently received from the property appraiser. Staff members of the property appraiser are located right outside here in the hallway if you have any questions, as well as members of our Office of Management and Budget, our two Jennifers, and additional staff out there to my left out in the chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, this is a bit of a formal process, so there's a little bit of a script and some things that we'll go through tonight, so if you can bear with us and follow along, and we'll get to a point where there'll be some good time for some questions and some comments and things by the board and some discussion, but we just kind of got to go through a little process to get there. So Madam Chair and Commissioners, at this meeting, we'll be setting the tentative millage rates. The board will have another opportunity to consider these millage rates at the final budget hearing in 2 weeks. However, these rates will not be able to be raised without sending out new notices to every property owner. So at this time, I would ask that the Office Management and Budget read into the record the tentative millage rates, which are used to fund the portion of the FY 2025-2026 budget that is supported by property taxes.
Madam Chair and Board of County Commissioners, I'd like to take a moment to review some terms for the public that we will be using frequently tonight. The millage rate is the amount per thousand of property value that is used to calculate property taxes. The rollback millage rate is the millage rate that would generate the same ad valorem tax revenue as was generated the previous year, excluding changes from new construction, annexation, and de-annexation. The aggregate millage rate is the rate obtained by dividing the sum of all ad valorem taxes levied by the board by the taxable value of the county. The aggregate rate expresses the average tax rate. The amount of taxes a property owner pays is calculated using the millage rate per thousand times the property value. On this slide, we're going to discuss the state of Florida establishing the laws that govern this process. The taxing authorities set tax rates. The taxing authorities, including the county, the city, the school board, and fire district, just to name a few. The property appraiser assesses the value of each property. The amount of property taxes someone pays is calculated by taking the millage rate, multiplying it by the assessed property value, divided by 1,000. The tentative aggregate millage rate for FY 2025 and 2026 budget is 8.0219, which is a 0.17% decrease from the current FY 2024-2025 aggregate millage rate, or 5.45% increase from the FY 2024-2025 aggregate rollback rate of 7.6071. The individual FY 2025-2026 tentative millage rates are as follows. General Fund, 4.2222 mils. Fine and Forfeiture, 2.7294 mils. Erosion Control, Zone E, 0.1000 mils. Mosquito Control District, 0.1352 mils. Unincorporated Services, MSTU, 0.5000 mils. Stormwater, MSTU, 0.4731 mils. Law Enforcement, MSTU, 0.8403 mils. Transit, MSTU, 0.2500 mils. South Hutchinson Island Beach Erosion Control, MSTU, 0.5200 mils.
So, Madam Chair, before we get into the budget presentation. We owe you a follow-up conversation from a few weeks back. Under public comment, a gentleman got up and spoke about a proposal on how to reduce the millage rate. And we had talked with you about coming back at this meeting tonight and being able to revisit that and go over that and bring some clarity to some of that information, because we weren't prepared for that when that gentleman showed up. So Jennifer Hill has a couple slides that we'll go through, and then we'll try to hopefully clear up that and make right on that conversation, and then we'll move back into the budget presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So the first bullet on this slide represents the statement that was made, and that was that for the current year we're in, the beginning fund balance as of September 30th of 2024 was $92 million. And when all was said and done and the actual numbers were accounted for and the audit was done, the total amount was $112,959,020. Which was a difference of $20,807,243 more than the estimate. So the numbers in that statement are accurate. It represents what was in the adopted budget versus the final audited figures. However, I want to show you what that is made up of, and really, of that $20.8 million, only $3.9 million of it was unrestricted. And since this fiscal year has begun, that money has already been allocated and put towards expenditures. And so when we look at the details of those figures, the $112 million of the total actual fund balance in the general fund represents $22.8 million that's in restricted accounts related to grants and subfunds and program numbers that have restrictions associated with them, leaving $90,162,256 as unrestricted. And that helps to fund the overall budget that we have currently adopted. When we talk about the $20.8 million difference, that total amount is broken down into three different major categories. The first is $8 million of that is restricted, related to grants, subfunds, and programs. That is your ARPA type of accounts, and other grants that we have received. The next major category is $8.9 million of capital projects that were in last year's budget that were not originally in this year's budget, and in order to true up the budget so that those projects could continue into this fiscal year, that money was placed into those accounts to be able to reflect the actual budgets for those capital projects. And once you take away those two amounts, the amount that's left that's truly unrestricted was $3.9 million. Now, if you recall, every year we do a process where we true up our fund balances to the audited actuals. And actually before that, we true up to unaudited actuals. So the first true up we did was back in January of this year. And we, at that time, acknowledged all of that money and put it in their appropriate accounts. So that $3.9 million became part of the general fund's reserves at that time. Since that time, we've added that $3.9 million into the reserves, but we have utilized those reserves for $21.7 million worth of expenditures related to two specific areas. One was to advance money to be able to purchase the 8881 US 1 property, and the other was Hurricane Milton recovery. So when all is said and done, all of the money that was identified in the prior discussion has been put into the budget, and even with the addition of that money into the reserves, the other things that we've spent out of the reserves means that reserves have actually gone down since that time.
So in short story, Madam Chair and Commissioners, obviously we anticipate over time to recover the money from the hurricane recovery, but as you know how that works and how we've been playing recovery catch up from all previous storms, so that could be a long and hard endeavor. We do have shorter term plans to recover the other money for the 881 with the sale of the one property that we're working on with the city PSL and some other avenues, but we're still falling short. So with that, based on the analysis that was given under public comment, if that money was all unrestricted, like had it looked in the ACFR without knowing the detail, there might have been a conversation to entertain, what was being suggested as far as reduction. But as you can see from this right here, not only do we not have that capability, but we're actually the other way right now. And obviously, as we're rolling into the next, we're in the midst of the next storm season. We still don't have recovery from last storm season. So, we could be a couple storms into something before we ever see any money back from FEMA. So it's not a wise suggestion to use that as our mechanism. But as we get into the budget presentation, there'll be some other avenues that we found to find a way to reduce the millage even more than what we've shown already on the screen here. So if you'll let us go, we'll jump right into the rest of the budget presentation and show you how we can get that accomplished.
Okay, does the board have any other questions up to this point? No. Okay. Please continue.
Give me a moment.
On this slide, we discuss 3 categories of property value increases. Homesteaded property values are capped at 3% increase each year, meaning that the value cannot go above 3%. Non-homesteaded properties are capped at 10%, meaning that the property value cannot go above 10% each year. Exceptions to this increase are change of ownership, new construction, additions or improvements to the property, or change in eligibility for exemptions. On this particular slide, we're looking at the Florida's personal income and overall economy. Florida's personal income and overall economy will continue to grow, but just at a slower rate. For July 2025, the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers increased 0.2%, after rising 0.3% in June, seasonally adjusted, and rose to 2.7% over the last 12 months, not seasonally adjusted. The index for all items less food and energy increased 0.3% in July, after rising 0.2% in June, seasonally adjusted, up to 3.1% over the year, not seasonally adjusted. On this slide, we compare the growth projections. This slide includes growth projections for Martin County, Indian River, Okeechobee, Brevard, and Palm Beach County. St. Lucie County growth is estimated to be 385,746. On this next slide, this is the strategic plan, vision, missions, and goals. BOCC priority areas include infrastructure, facility and operational efficiency, environmental protection, economic development and transit, housing affordability and workforce housing, air and seaport development, tourism, fiscal responsibility and revenue generation, along with public safety. The Citizens Budget Committee recommended priorities are to maintain the overall millage rate, preserve and maintain infrastructure, seek recreational facility user cost recovery, and maintain reserves at 25%. On this particular slide, we're going to talk about the general fund. The general fund accounts are for all the resources that don't have restrictions that require the use of a separate fund. The general fund provides funding for a variety of county services such as emergency management, parks and recreation, libraries, veteran services, not veterinarian services, my apologies, as well as the administration and support needed to be available to provide those services. It also funds a variety of other agencies such as some of the sheriff's budget and inmate medical expenses, supervisor of election, and clerk of court. On this slide, the fine and forfeiture fund is established by, we'll talk about fine and forfeiture. The fund is established by state of law to be used for court-related criminal prosecution and law enforcement functions. While fine and forfeitures are deposited into this fund, the primary funding source is countywide property taxes. There are some BOCC services funded through this, such as County's 9/11 Center and the Criminal Justice. However, the vast majority of this fund is used to fund other agencies, such as the Sheriff, Public Defender, State Attorney, Court Administration, Guardian Ad Litem, and the Medical Examiner. Here we're going to talk about the recommended budget, which is $913.1 million. Here you can see the budget broken down by fund type. Special revenue funds include items like our MSTUs. Debt funds account for money in the county obligated toward debt payments. Capital funds are funds restricted for capital expenditures such as impact fees and proceeds from bonds. The county has 4 areas that operate similar to a business: the golf course, building and code, utilities, and solid waste, which are accounted for in the enterprise funds. Our internal service funds are used to track our workers' compensation, group insurance, property insurance, and our property insurance operations. And the trust agency funds are used for how the county handles its custodial capacity. On this chart, the area that the board has the most flexibility in allocating is roughly $422.1 million in the general fund and fine and forfeiture. Of the $422.2 million, $152.7 million is on non-operating account, such as reserves and interfund transfers and CRAs. This leaves $269.5 million for BOC, that leaves $269.5 million for operating. Of the $269.5 million, roughly 35% or $93.5 million is allocated towards board departments. Of the $163.1 million for constitutional officers, you can see here that 83% of it is for the sheriff.
When we look at the upcoming budget year, we look at the changes that we have in incremental revenue, primarily in our general fund and fine and forfeiture fund. As mentioned, that's the area that the board has the most flexibility in allocation. That incremental revenue for the coming year is $29.5 million. This slide represents $6.3 million of allocations that go to other agencies outside of the Board of County Commissioners, many of which are mandated, such as our CRAs, Medicaid increase, New Horizons. We have judicial agencies, the property appraiser and tax collector, and board-approved funding for the Hands Clinic and the Boys and Girls Club, leaving $23.2 million left for allocation. This next slide represents about $14.5 million of additional allocations towards the constitutional officers for the supervisor of elections, clerk of court, and sheriff, as well as for the Department of Health. After those allocations are made, the amount left for BOCC operations is $87.77 million. Of that $87.77 or $8.8 million, before the board started this process, staff looked within existing budgets to identify some savings before allocating out the budget. That represented $0.6 million. Then the county administrator recommended an additional $500,000 for capital maintenance, as well as a general wage adjustment, annual adjustments to the health insurance program, state mandated changes in the Florida retirement system rates, as well as operating increases in the department's budgets. In addition, there's additional funding in this budget for the county campus, as well as the roads, and there's additional funding set aside for an asset management software to better track and maintain the county's assets, as well as funding for the contract for our ERP replacement, which is replacing software that's been in place for many decades. In addition to that funding that was just discussed that was related to just general fund and fine and forfeiture fund, I also want to point out a handful of areas specifically as they relate to the BOCC's priorities for this budget year. So one of those priorities was infrastructure, specifically as it related to roads, our utilities, and stormwater. And so when it comes to the roads, the upcoming budget has $6.5 million in there for road resurfacing, $2 million in there for Old Dixie Highway, $6 million in there for Selvets Road improvements, $3.5 million in there for Glades Cutoff Road widening and improvements, just to name a few. As well, in addition to the roads, when it comes to utilities, there are a number of our most critical capital utility needs that are being funded through a bond issue that was put out back in June of this year. When it comes to our stormwater projects, there are many of them that are funded from a variety of sources, including our half-cent infrastructure surtax, road impact fees, and our stormwater MSTU. This slide represents a few of those projects. Airport and seaport development was another of the board's priorities. When it comes to airport projects, this slide represents some of the areas where funding is appropriated for the coming year, including commercial service readiness, Aero West Taxiway, and an airport excavator, just to name a few. When it comes to Seaport, there's funding in the budget for Harbor Point development, Port and Harbor Street roadway and drainage improvements, and Port Regional stormwater. Another of the board's priorities was housing affordability and workforce housing. This budget includes funding to help the county leverage funding from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation as a match towards a program that is put out annually. It also includes funding to continue the housing hub for homeless individuals and a rental assistance program. In the area of environmental protection, these projects are funded primarily through impact fees in our capital improvement plan. Over the course of the next 5 years, there are several different projects that provide greenways and trails and enhance preserves. This slide represents some of those projects that are in the budget for next fiscal year. There is also continued funding for the transit department to modernize the county's bus system, reduce traffic congestion, and allow residents to access mobility services that provide life essential access to employment, education, job training, healthcare, and nourishment. And this slide represents a few of those projects. Tourism has $2 million in parks impact fees that is related to enhancing the fairgrounds with the development of an adventure district in the future. In addition to that, the tourism operating budget, which is funded out of the tourism development tax, includes funding for promotional advertising, aid to private organizations, and contractual services. In the area of public safety, in addition to funding for the sheriff's recommended budget, there's also funding in the BOCC departments related to 911 dispatch consoles, a new animal safety officer, operating increases for emergency management, and for 911. In the area of the budget priority for facilities and operational efficiency, the budget includes $2.5 million in funding towards the future campus, which will help us to get our facilities much more efficient in the future. It also includes $500,000, as I mentioned, for that asset management system, and $500,000 towards a dedicated to capital maintenance. Some of the projects that are funded in our capital account are listed on this slide. Some cooler tower replacements, a roof replacement, some network infrastructure, as well as the jail maintenance shop. When we look at the budget for the coming year and we look at the millage rates that the county is being recommended to adopt, we also look back at where we are today. And so going back to the budget that we are currently in, we look at all of the counties within the state of Florida, and we review the Board of County Commissioners budgets for each of those agencies. And what we found consistently is that when we look at them, the millage rate for St. Lucie County, which is represented here in green, is 8.0354 mils. That compares to the average of all 67 Board of County Commissioners of 7.8288 mils. So we are slightly higher than the countywide average for millage rate. The range ranges anywhere from 3.3 to 13.5 mils. We are right there in the middle, close to average. However, because we have a lower than average property value, and the way that property taxes are calculated, what that means is at the end of the day, once those calculations are done, the actual amount of taxes St. Lucie County collects per capita is actually lower than the average of the 67 counties. So our taxes collected for this fiscal year are $833 per capita, as compared to the statewide average of $942 per capita. And looking at the various 67 Board of County Commissioners, the range is anywhere from $238 to $1,940 per capita. This slide just represents a sample of the trim notice, or property tax notice, that went out to every property owner within the last few weeks. And on the right-hand side is a sample of the actual tax bill, which will go out in October, and towards the end of October. On that, the ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that are ones that are imposed by this board, while the other ones are from different taxing authorities. And then on the left-hand side for the trim notice, the part on the very top, the first block there represents the taxes that are related to the Board of County Commissioners. The other ones listed on the trim notice are related to other agencies. And so this slide just reiterates the millage rates that were announced at the beginning of this presentation. They are currently the same as the rates that were adopted for the fiscal year that we are in. And so
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I know this is a much condensed version from the 200 and some odd slides that you've seen in July, through the workshop. And we know how some of you were really eager to see all 200 and some of those slides again today, but we felt we could slim it down to these 40 or so plus slides to kind of recap anything with you. We're happy to answer any questions, or we can wait for public comment and then answer questions after. I think we do have one or two more slides that we can show after this one that Jennifer can move to the next one, I think, the next slide on here. In part of our conversations since July, we heard from each of you is that, there was a interest in to continue to look for ways to try to slim the budget down and reduce it. We we put the pen to the paper and came up with a few suggestions here for you this evening to kind of look at. And obviously, whatever one that you decide on, we would just ask that you would allow us, whichever one that you picked, if you pick one, that we would then have the time to go back and figure out how to make that work in the budget and redo all these numbers for the 18th, reflecting this, you know, in addition to what you've seen today as a reduction. And we can have more of that discussion later on this evening, but we did wanted to share that we are proposing an opportunity to reduce the millage even farther. And we thought we wanted to share that before we moved any past this point. We can talk about this now, or we can wait till after public comment and talk about it as a whole, once you hear the feedback from everybody, if that's the will of the board.
What's the pleasure of the board? Should we go into public comment, or would you like to have this discussion first?
Public comment, it's my opinion.
Anyone else? I'll go with that. Okay. All right, so what I will do now then is open it up to public comment. We are going to do things a little differently. Typically, you're timed. We're not going to do that this evening, and typically we also don't engage, and we will do that tonight. Before we open it up all the way, I want to acknowledge some of our constitutionals. Sheriff Del Toro is already walking up to the podium. Good evening, sir. We also have Clerk Miller and then our REC Chair, Joe James, with us this evening. Also, Citizens Budget Committee. Those in the audience, could you stand quickly? Mr. Science, Mr. Lowry. Yes, yes. All right, folks. Some of those four individuals that just stood up are part of our Citizens Budget Committee. They take their time out of their day, out of their lives to come here once a month, 8 or 9 meetings a year, I forget, but 7:30 in the morning, bright and early, and yeah, doing it because they want to.
On a
They wanna
Friday, no
learn.
doubt, Madam Chair. They come in on Fridays at 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the
7.
morning. So that's a dedicated group to come in on Fridays at 7:30.
Even earlier. So, Sheriff Del Toro. Good
evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each of you for your participation, teamwork, understanding, and most importantly, your patience during our budget process. As you know, I started January 7th, inherited an organization that really wasn't up to my standards, and I think there were some areas neglected, such as salaries, infrastructure, and equipment. I put together a very large budget request, pretty shocking actually, I think for most of you. But there were several factors that led to that. You know, 82% of our budget is salary and benefits for employees. We're a very large employer, over 800 employees there, and there was just such a large market correction this year in our salaries. So we tacked that onto the fact that a lot of our employees were left behind over the years, either missing steps and doing things. So the monies you've given me, the recurring monies, are going to be put towards those salaries to correct that. Which is really going to help us with recruiting, more importantly, retention. We have some of the brightest and best talent there, and I'd hate to lose them. You know, I grew up in a council manager form of government for 26 years, and as the chief of police, I worked with a council. I was accountable to a council. We had a line item budget that was very transparent, showed everybody where the money was going. And it's a little different being a constitutional officer. Yeah, you have to prepare a budget with, you know, salaries, capital, and operating. But you know what's very, I think, dangerous about it is once I get that money from the Board of County Commissioners, which is the funding source, I'm pretty much free to do whatever I want with that money. And I think that causes a lot of concern amongst county commissioners. I understand that. And I think too much power for anybody is dangerous. So what I want to say to you publicly, what I said to you privately, is number one, I welcome the accountability. And more importantly, I'm very committed to transparency. And so on a monthly basis, I will be giving you expense reports to show you where that money's going. And I look forward to coming back on a quarterly basis publicly to show you exactly where that money's going and where those results are. I understand as an elected official, just like you are, we have competing priorities. You have projects you want to fund. And in most jurisdictions and counties, the sheriff's office is the largest part of any budget that is out there. So I heard our name mentioned quite a few times by Mrs. Hill. So I wanted to come up here and just make sure you understand that I'm committed to that process. But I'm also committed to producing a result that I think, thanks to your funding and your support, we're going to provide a transformational result that we can all be proud of and all share in that win. Because I think public safety is really the foundation of any community, and it really sets the stage for quality of life and economic development moving forward. This is a growing county that's going to be one day 600,000 people here. the way to attract them, the first thing people always ask when they're coming to a community, is it a safe community? I'm committed to making that happen, and our team's committed to making that happen, but we could not make that happen without your support, and I just wanted to publicly thank you and appreciate you supporting me in my first year, in my first term. And we got a lot of work to do, but I look forward to working together next year and doing an even a better job and getting out in front of it. We were kind of playing catch up this year, so I really appreciate your patience, and I just want to thank you publicly, so I appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I also want to personally thank you because we're new on the scene, right? But years of sins of the past, so to speak,
Sure.
what you touched on, it's hard to break that mentality, that cycle. So I want to thank you because you and your team have absolutely been super transparent. We all just got stats broken down by our district this past week. Fantastic, amazing. Didn't ask for it. It just showed up in my inbox, and
Yeah.
the communication, the openness, it's just completely different than what I've seen in the 3 years now that I've been here. So truly do thank you. It absolutely was a sticker shock.
Yes.
So, a little touch and go, but glad, like you said, we came together because public safety is paramount.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was a good example that other counties to follow as well, how to get it done, and I think we did that. And I really want you to understand that this is your law enforcement agency. This isn't my law enforcement agency. This is the community's, and I want you to look at this as an asset, not a liability or a cost. And because I think the investment's going to be worth it. And like I said, we're going to produce a result that everyone's going to be very proud of and could celebrate as a win moving forward. So.
absolutely. Look
All
forward
right.
to it. Thank you so much for being
Thank you.
here.
Thank you all.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Commissioner Glass?
Just wanted to say thank you to Sheriff Del Toro as well. Made the process very easy for us. And also that 600,000 population estimate for 2050 was the high estimate. That's not guaranteed. So just wanted to make sure we got that clear.
We'll grow incrementally, so we'll be good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set.
Anyone else?
All right.
Oh, Commissioner Levin?
Yes. Just have to say thanks again, Rich. Your transparency's been incredible from day one. Explaining everything, your staff has been, has really raised the bar, and I really look forward to a continued partnership. And we appreciate that, as a board, public safety is very important to us, and we look forward to what comes in the future for us all together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. So anyone from the public wishing to address the board, now is your time. Good evening, Mr. Fry.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair and Honorable Commissioners. My name is Ed Fry. My address is 1816, Hazelwood Drive, White City area. I appreciate the breakdown of the information that the staff provided on to give a little bit more detail on the numbers that I presented to you earlier this year. But I do have a couple of comments, and one of them being that a statement that of all of those funds in the breakdown in there was approximately $3.9 million. It was unrestricted. It would have been nice to see that set aside to be given back to the taxpayers in the form of the millage reduction. Additionally, I noticed that they stated that there was $90.1 million in the general fund that was unrestricted. I know that you would like to have a pretty healthy fund balance for anything that may come up and occur, but again, it would be nice to see part of that returned back to the taxpayers in the form of the millage reduction. So again, I am requesting that as you go forward, that you direct staff to reduce the millage rate in the general fund by 1/10 of the mill. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board under public comment? No, thinking about it. Just giving everyone a little more time. Come on up here to the podium. Yeah, absolutely. As you begin, if I could have you give your first and last name, this way the secretary can get it down, please.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Maureen Kennedy, and I live at 3416 Southwest Catskill Drive. And this is the thing, we got a new house in 2022. The first year, this is just for the interest rate and the principal with the property tax. This don't include the insurance. Plus, the mortgage company is forcing us to have flood insurance. In the area that I lived in, we have never had a flood in over 25 years. Not one flood. But they're forcing me to get insurance. So now I have 2 insurance that I have to pay. So the first year, just the interest, the principal, and the property tax was on the $1,900. The next year, it jumped up to $2,800. And I'm in shock. And I'm like, I don't understand. How is it jumped almost $1,000? And when I went over to the office, they can't really give me a good explanation. And I'm here to understand why is it jumped almost $1,000. And we have Homestead. Now, don't get me wrong, I see that, it makes sense, and I see what's happening in Port St. Lucie. I love Port St. Lucie. I love the area that I live in. I actually do see the development that is happening. I see the work that is happening. But still, it is hard for working class people to have their property tax jump up so much. Where are we supposed to get this money? Our salary is not being increased by that. It's over $900. Actually, it went up to almost, it was 11,000, I think $700 or $800. So it practically increased by $1,000. Now, I understand this is a brand new house. And here's the thing. On my street, my neighbors, I have one neighbor. Her house is way bigger than mine. My house is 2,900 square feet under air. Her house is over 4,000. Her property tax is less than mine. And everybody keeps saying, well, you know, it's a brand new house. And even I have friends over Torino, house value over $1 million. My house's value about, at the time, 2 years ago, it was $540,000, the city said. But I was paying more taxes. And I just need somebody to explain that to me so I can understand why is it I am paying more taxes than somebody who have a bigger house than me. I have a brand new house, yes. But that's no reason. That is still not no reason for the property tax to jump almost $1,000. And I can't understand because, number one, Port St. Lucie is getting so popular now. There are so much people. When I remember my first house, I've been living here since '07. I work in Palm Beach. And when I was coming home, the traffic, even from Fort Lauderdale, and you guys, if you live long enough, you know what I'm talking about. Coming from Fort Lauderdale in the evening to come up here, oh my God, it used to take an hour and a half. Now it's almost 2 hours in the evening if you're lucky. So Port St. Lucie is doing really well. I have friends who want to buy a house in Port St. Lucie. They don't want to buy a house here. They go to Palm Bay. My girlfriend just bought a house in Palm Bay. Why? Simply because of property tax. And I don't understand why Port St. Lucie property tax is so much more expensive than other places. I just need answers. I just need to understand. Because I'm 64, and at this rate, I work till I drop dead paying property tax.
Okay, ma'am. So a couple of things in terms of, and what I'll have you do definitely is step out to the hall where Michelle Franklin has some of her employees out there. But property taxes are an equation. It starts with the property appraiser doing the evaluation, and a lot of things can go into that, like the year that you purchased the house, the exemptions that you have on that. So there's a lot of variables as to why you could have 2 identical homes, but have you pay very different amounts for taxes. I happened to pull up your bill while you were talking. I was not listening to you, so that you know, okay. And so just to clarify, because you live in the city of Port St. Lucie, you're not only paying taxes for the city of Port St. Lucie, but you're also paying county taxes, okay? So for the county, you are, if, on your column 3 of your trim notice, if tonight we were to approve that millage, which it looks like it's going to be less, if I have a majority rule, but you're paying to the county 7.4368 mils. With that, could you, Jennifer, pull up the slide that shows everything that we're responsible for out of that? And so just to compare, to give you an idea, the school board, just for the school board, you're paying 6.28 mils. That's just for the school board. And then Port St. Lucie, you're paying over 5 mils between them, their Port St. Lucie voted debt, and then you're also paying $656 in non-ad valorem assessments for your stormwater and your garbage.
Okay.
So that's sort of the breakdown
Okay, talk about
for your
garbage.
particular bill.
Yes, just a minute. This is their property tax, but just to talk about garbage, that's the next thing. I think a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now, right? We used to get pickup twice a week.
Yes.
We used to get bulk and trash once a week. This is what happened. Now we get garbage pickup.
Once a week.
Once a week.
I live in Port St. Lucie, I know.
Okay, so you know, but
Yes,
then it went
ma'am.
up $300.
It did, so I'm going to tell you
Why?
why there also. So it's 2 parts. We run the landfill. We did have to raise our tipping fees. We had not raised them in years, and they were completely out of line. Because of all the growth, we've seen the landfill fill up exponentially faster than we ever anticipated. And we were looking at the life of the landfill approaching sooner rather than later. So we have to fund for additional cells, which costs money. So we have a part in that. We had to raise our tipping fees. But the FCC contract with Port St. Lucie, when they signed it 3 years ago, there was an automatic increase for this year. 3 years into the contract, they knew there was a renegotiation, there was an increase in fees. So that's why you're seeing an increase without getting any additional services.
And that's the thing.
And I
understand
agree
the
with you.
increase, but you dropped the service though.
We didn't, though. So that's what I need you to understand, because you and I reside within the city limit. Commissioner Lowry Commissioner Lee reside within the city limits of Port St. Lucie. We're right there with you. We're paying all those taxes I just broke down for you, city, county. We have no authority, no say over the city council. We cannot, even though we're the county and they're the city and they're within our municipality, we have no jurisdiction. We have no authority by law.
That's
So
not
I
fair,
hear
though.
you, because I have a 2-year-old, I have 4 dogs. Once a week service doesn't work for me either.
I know
So
we're paying more, but we're getting less. If
Yes,
fine,
ma'am.
you want to increase it, fine. We understand inflation and everything. We get that, but don't drop the service and then charge us more.
I agree.
That's not right.
I agree. But as far as your more detailed questions, I would please urge you, step right outside here at the table. We have amazing staff, our staff, property appraiser staff. They're here to help you, okay? All right, thank you for being here tonight. Good
Madam-
evening, sir. Come
Madam
on.
Chair, can I just
Commissioner
say,
Townsend.
Mrs. Kennedy, when you go out there also, could you inform her also about the value adjustment board and everything like that, that she could, you can fill out and petition things too. She'll go over that with you.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Ferguson. I came to Port St. Lucie in 2021. I lost my mother. Came down to take care of my dad. And that year, the taxes was roughly about $3,800. Been taking care of my dad. It was me and my dad. And last year, I paid $4,200. I understand about the change of name, okay, but I don't believe when it's family. It's just the first name is changed. Last year, I paid $4,200. This year, you're looking at $12,000. The price, I mean, what people make here in Port St. Lucie can't cover that.
I don't want to interrupt you, but while you're speaking, could you give me the address so I could pull up?
6101 Northwest Duke Circle.
Okay, thank you, sir. Go ahead.
I try to honor my parents, you know, by trying to keep the house. But the taxes is ridiculous. We're talking about a difference of $8,000, okay? And I hear y'all talk about the price of the house. But, you know, I spoke to the guy who assessed the prices of these houses, and he goes, it's a general price. You can't do that because there's things wrong with my house. I need roof, I need a hot water tank, whatever it is. So if you assess the house at 500,000, and when I try to sell the house, they're gonna beat me down to 400, maybe 350,000. But I'm paying taxes on 500,000. I think that's really not fair. I can understand if the name has changed to somebody else, but family, it's all we have. That's all I have. And that's all I'm trying to honor my parents. But you're making it real hard for me. I mean, $8,000 increase? I don't understand that.
So, Mr. Ferguson, did you just change title on the house? Did you just take over
My
as
father
ownership?
passed away in December 18th, okay? My mother passed away February 25th of 2021. That's what brought me down here. The funniest thing is my father put the house in trust for me. When you send a bill like you do, my name is on it with my father's, okay? Now my father's deceased now. You take all the benefits from him and just have my name, okay? And the price is, the taxes is ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. At $8,000 increase, it's not changing, like I said, the first name change. That's it. And I don't think that the increase should be like that.
So, it's sounding like your exemptions, something has changed in your exemptions.
Well, when they went off of when my father purchased the house. When my father purchased the house, it was in better shape. 100% better shape compared now.
All right, now we're getting into outside of my scope. Now we're really getting into valuation, which is definitely the property appraiser's sandbox, so I'm
I
going
wanted to bring that
to.
to your attention about the difference of the taxes
But
of
I-
$8,000 is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
But I would definitely
Yes.
discuss your specific case with the property appraiser's office. And if you can't if they can't go over the details tonight, then reach out to them in the next few days, because we do have they do have a process for Value Adjustment Board where if there are mistakes in the way things are done, that there is a short window of time where they can do it. And the reason I say that is when property does change ownership, it does start over. And so all of that accumulated exemption amount that built over all those years went away with the change of ownership. However, what I don't know the answers to, and that's a question for the property appraiser's office, is with the way it was done going into a trust, in that I'm not sure whether it should have gone away, and they will be the ones to be able to help you with that answer.
Yeah, I fully understand and I appreciate what you're saying, but it's just the first thing. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
but I
crazy.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board? All right, going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close public comments. And come back to agenda item 3D, Mr. Landry.
So at this point, Madam Chair, we're ready for any sort of comments, discussion from the board with staff on where you'd like to go. Obviously, remembering tonight, we're just going to be setting tentative with the understanding that we'll be coming back on the 18th for formal, for final decision. And if the board is inclined to engage in one of these suggested reductions, then we would ask that you move forward with what we're recommending tentatively tonight, with the understanding that we have to adjust to whatever one of these scenarios that you're suggesting, and we'll have that back in right order on the 18th, and we'll be able to show it to the public in a presentation, and then go for a final, if that's the will of the board. But if we're ready for that, then we would just need your recommendation on there, and then we could move into the reading of the of the two tentative millage rates, and then the budget.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Lee.
I'd like to suggest lowering it as much as possible with the suggestion of $1 million budget cut and reducing that the 0.0237 mils, which will for the first time put us under 8 in a long time. And I would like to just say that for the last, if we do this cut, I believe it's the last 6 years that we have been doing millage rate cuts, but this will be the first year that if we approve it, it will be under the 8.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lowry.
On board too as well with the $1 million budget reduction. I mean, I feel like staff has worked really hard. I know this board's been a little tough with the whole budget process, wanting to reduce, as much as we can, and we've really gone in pretty depth, more so than I think any other boards have in a long time. So I think this is a move in the right direction. Being under the 8 mils, is a start, and hopefully next year we're going to continue to find ways to lower.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely want the additional 0.0237 mils. That would bring us, rough math, about 7.9982. But just taking it up a notch further. So I too would love to see more come off. So that's something depending on how it shakes out, I'm still going to ask, whatever we vote on tonight, still going to ask them to try to fine tune and see what they can find. But I do want to be cautious in how much we lower this year, right? Federal government scrubbed, fine and dandy. They just passed their stuff on to the states. The state scrubbed their budget, fine and dandy. They just passed those costs on to local government. We do know there's going to be some sort of property tax reform. Representative Overdorf, I'm sure we've all spoken to him quite a bit. He doesn't seem to think that they're necessarily going away, but you never know, right? So I would like to see us do this cut. I do definitely still want to do, whether you want to call it a productivity study, I would like all the departments to be looked at to see how we can become more efficient, and just commit to, even though it might seem small, at least $1 million every year that we're shaving off, which should be easy to do because it's a slow incremental tightening. Looking at where we can find efficiencies, looking where technology can cut some costs. So that would be my thought on it.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cosby.
So I'm not looking for a really extended back and forth with staff or not, but I just want to confirm, because I should say why. I've received no less than 20 phone calls today, people demanding us go back to the rollback rate, and I've had to kind of explain why that's not necessarily the smartest thing to do this year. And the number I was giving was 17.5 million roughly. Is that what we are above the rollback rate essentially if we were to go down to the 7.6071?
That is approximately.
Okay.
Within.
And so, one of my priorities is to make sure that we're fully funding the sheriff's budget request, to make sure that we have good public safety in our area. And so that's one giant reason why I would not be recommending the rollback rate this evening. And I too am for the $1 million reduction in the budget today at the tentative budget meeting, but that's kind of with the caveat that next year I'd like us to go back to the rollback rate. So we have an entire year to plan for that, and I think that it could be achievable.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Townsend, anything?
I too am with this. I also want to be mindful that next year I do think we're going to be looking at a decrease. I don't think we're going to be looking at an increase in property values. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm cautious as to how much we can take it down. I would love to take it down $3 million and give everybody a couple $100, but we have to be mindful of what the governor's considering. We have to be mindful that I don't think we're going to see a 17% increase in property values, and we have to plan accordingly to that. This is a fraction, but every fraction matters. And it does still reflect that this is a commitment, that we are responsible with our budget, I think. I think we've looked at every avenue that we can. I appreciate Mr. Fry and his input that he's had into the budget this year. I wish more people would be involved. I think it does make a difference. I think it's important that we continue to maintain a strong reserve, and we are doing that this year, and we're still lowering the millage rate. So, and along with that, we're funding the sheriff more than we've ever funded in the history of St. Lucie County. So to be able to do that and bring the sheriff where he needs to be, and for us to look at the property values of what we're potentially looking at and not knowing where the governor's going, y'all are all aware of unfunded mandates.
Yep.
I think that we've done a good job this year. So,
Very, very thorough. I mean, no one can say we did not
yeah.
double and triple check. So, all right. Is there any further discussion then?
So, Madam Chair, you know, we have the resolution, the two resolutions for the tentative millage and the tentative budget. We would just like you to consider moving those forward with the caveat that we've heard you that with the $1 million reduction for the final, because we're going to need time to go back and revisit this, lower the budget and lower the millage rates, then come back with the final resolutions at the next budget. But we'd like you to consider approving the tentative ones as they are, and then we'll, with that caveat, that we reduce it to this for the final meeting and come back with you. And if we can find anything else, we will.
Gotcha.
So we would be going on to item D, which would be the consideration of the approval of the resolution adopting the FY 2025-2026 tentative millage rates with the caveat of that reduction to be brought back at the September 18th final budget hearing.
Okay. Now, for me, I consulted with legal. I will be recusing myself for the Boys and Girls Club, so we're going to pull that out for a separate vote.
That would be
correct?
on the
budget.
item F for the budget. This
Okay,
would just be for the
perfect.
tentative millage right here for item D, or item E, I'm sorry, would be for the resolution for the tentative budget if the board would indulge that first.
Okay. All right. So is there
So
a
do you
motion?
need a motion?
Yes, we do.
So I move approval of the millage rate being 7.9982, with the understanding that we can come back at the next one and still lower it more.
We would have to approve the tentative millage that was stated in the resolution, Madam Chair, Commissioner Townsend, with that added on, if we bring that back with the corrective to finalize that way, because then we'd have to end up recessing and
So
redo
you-
the resolutions.
So you want it at 8.0219?
Tentative with the
Tentatively,
caveat
with the lowering
to,
of the $1 million budget at the .0237.
correct, and we'll bring that back for the final
Okay.
and on that.
You'll have that?
So,
Yeah, got that.
no, she's like,
So what we're doing is, it's 8.219,
0219.
0219, and including the $1 million budget reduction of the .0237.
Well, and just to clarify, what we're asking you to do is adopt the resolution 25-185 as it's being presented, but then give us further direction to come back with that additional reduction for the next time. And the reason is there are a lot of intricate calculations that have
you
to
have to
merge
add.
together exactly perfectly. Otherwise, we have issues with Department of Revenue. So we want to have that time to do
She
it
has
right.
all right. So there is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All in, oh, sorry, we're doing roll call. Madam Secretary, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Lee,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clasby,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowry,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Townsend,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Fowler.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we go, I would like to say, because I see Clerk Miller in the back, I just want to say that we have a rock star sitting here next to me, and I think she goes unnoticed too many times, and I just want to recognize Vera, our secretary, because she does an amazing job.
Thank you.
Indeed. Yes, she does.
So, Madam Chair, moving on to item F, it would be for the board's consideration and approval of the resolution adopting the FY 2026 tentative budget with the caveat of the previous, reduction to come back, and also we would then separate out the allocation for the Boys and Girls Club, and that would be a separate one, but we do the budget overall, and then we'd pull out that allocation and do a separate on that one.
Okay.
And just logistically, what we'd be asking you to do tonight would be to adopt Resolution 2025-186 with the tentative budget split out by fund. So we're going to ask you to do that in a moment. However, as Commissioner Fowler previously mentioned, separate and apart from that resolution, I believe she would like to call for a separate vote regarding the inclusion of the $150,000 that is currently in the proposed budget for the Boys and Girls Club, because she does sit on the board of that. So that would not be a resolution. This would be just to put it on the record that you would like to recuse yourself on that, if I'm understanding that correctly. And then after you do that, then do the vote on the budget by fund for the overall budget.
Okay.
Got that?
Got
We
it.
should go line by line, I like that.
All right. So who's taking the helm?
So, let me, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
So to get this straight, we are doing a tentative budget at the .08.
8.0.
Excuse me, yes.
Mhm.
We're not doing the Boys and Girls Club on this. We're taking that out.
Yeah, let me try and clarify. I'm
How do I
sorry.
form
I'm
the
sorry.
motion, please?
So
There you
the
go.
first resolution you did was to adopt the tentative millage rates.
Already did that.
The next official part of the process that is set by Department of Revenue is to adopt the budget by fund. That budget does include the recommendation of $150,000 for the Boys Club and Girls Club. However, Commissioner Fowler came to us and expressed concern about that, being that she was on the board. So the suggestion would be to take two steps. The first step is to discuss the inclusion of the $150,000 for the Boys and Girls Club, call for a vote onto whether or not to include that in the budget. It is in all the numbers that are being presented, but she would just like to have that separate vote so that she can recuse herself from that vote. Once that is done, then we'll ask you to approve the tentative budget as presented.
So the first motion we need is a motion to remove the Boys and Girls
Yeah,
Club from
you
the
have to approve
tentative
the
fund.
budget with the inclusion of the Boys and Girls Club,
Yeah.
150,000, because Jamie is recusing herself from it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it would be clearer if instead of saying remove, just say you want to move forward with the $150,000 recommendation, but then let her recuse herself from that vote.
So your if you're thinking of that, the recommendation would be that what staff is saying is you're making a motion to move forward with the allocation of the Boys and Girls Club to be included in the budget resolution, and that'll be a vote that the chair can recuse yourself on, and then afterwards we'll come back and ask for a motion for the budget resolution by fund.
Alrighty. I thought that's what I just did. So we're making a motion.
I believe Commissioner Galit would like to make a motion to move the budget forward for the $150,000 recommendation for Boys and Girls Club to be included in the budget. And then,
Correct. And I am, just because I'm on the board of directors, just for appearances purposes, I am recusing myself from this vote.
That's what I would like.
so
Then I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Who seconded?
Commissioner Lowry. All right, and if you could call the roll.
Commissioner Clasby,
No.
Commissioner Townsend,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowry,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And so with that, the $150,000 that was in the tentative budget still stays in the tentative budget. And so the next thing staff would like to ask the board to do would be to consider resolution number 2025-186 as presented, which reflects the budget separated by fund, which totals $913,091,109. And that includes everything that has been presented today, including all adjustments made in the workshops that occurred over the summer.
With the caveat of the reduction of what was suggested on the previous resolution for the
Right,
for
so
the millage rate.
when we come back in 2 weeks, we would expect that number to go down by approximately $1 million. But
So we
we're
need a-
asking you to adopt it today so that it matches the millage rates that you adopted today.
Gotcha. Is
So
there a
I'd like-
motion?
Like to make a motion to accept the funds as they are with, that's it?
Well, that's it, with further direction to try and to reduce it.
With the
but-
$1 million.
But before we come back in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Do we get
Is
that?
that clear enough? Okay.
She has it.
All right.
Accept the funds.
She's got it.
Got it. All right, motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Commissioner Lowry, second. If you could call the roll.
Commissioner Clasby,
No.
Commissioner Townsend,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowry,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Fowler.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, that leaves us down to just announcements that the board will hold the final budget hearing on Thursday, September 18th, 2025 at 6 p.m. here in these commission chambers located at the Roger Portis Administrative Annex located at 2300 Virginia Avenue in Fort Pierce. And that will conclude the tentative budget hearing.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you for being here, everyone.